Hey everyone, it's Tim Holtz and I am here at Sizzix headquarters, excited to share with you the new releases for 2017. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff coming your way, and I just want to take you through some of the inspiration on how these dies are put to use. We're going to start off, of course, because the setting of this is all about cityscapes, and that is one of the new releases. Now, Cityscapes is composed of a variety of dies. There are some really cool dies, everything from a skyline that has this really cool kind of industrial look. There's even individual buildings where you can create your own cityscapes just by piecing these together. Of course, if we want a neighborhood, we have Suburbia where we can take this and build a bunch of individual buildings. And of course, to get around, we need Commute. And all of these dies work really, really well together. So let me share some of the inspiration on how these were created. We'll start with just a card. And one of the great things about working with dies, of course, is the fact that it's just a shape. It can be anything that you imagine it to be, whether you're a card maker, scrapbooker, mixed media, anything. Dies are shapes that can be kind of adapted into your own art form. So here we've taken and kind of layered the skyline here on a card, and you can see just by using some dimensional tape, we really create that cool 3D layer and just put that on a card, or of course this could even go into a frame. This one's also really unique because we've taken the individual buildings from the cityscape, kind of put this into its own frame. Whether you're doing an oval cutout or a circle, you could even use the snow globe for this. I just like the fact that you can create something very, very simple or very complex when it comes to working with a die cut. Really like that. Kind of a cool card. We'll go into a little bit more detail when we talk about texture fades as well. There's so many different layers to all of these projects. Now over here, pull this one in. Take a look at this one. So if you really want to create something industrial when it comes to working with these, just changing your surface to metallic cardstock really gives it a very cool industrial look. And I like the effect of sanding and painting this. And there again, dimensionalizing this just with some foam tape really creates a whole art piece all on its own. Isn't that cool? I love that. Love this at the top too. Again, so much to talk about. We'll bring some of these samples back just so you can see some of the other pieces that we've incorporated on these cards. You want to talk about layers and dimension. This one, again, using individual buildings. So remember, when you're working with cityscapes, this is about you designing your own city. You can use a skyline, you can use a couple of the buildings, or you can combine them all together and create layers. And here this was also introduced with one of the alphanumeric dies and kind of adding that in there. And the alphanumeric dies are really nice because you can use your own individual letters to create whatever sentiment you want on a card. And this is one of the earlier releases. This is also layered with marquee, so you can see those tiny little dots in there. Really, really cool when it comes to working with this. I love the background paper. It's like a folded map. So cool. Now taking this to a whole different level, beyond the card, is creating something like a shadow box, creating a vignette. So this one is created using a wood shadow box, covered in some metallic tape, adding some little wheels to it. But here inside, if you look closely, there is a cityscape in there. And the cityscape is dimensionalized, and I'll even light this up, which is really cool. Look at that. Really awesome. Just kind of flipping that switch just lights up your whole neighborhood, your whole city skyline in there. And you can see on the back, there it is, just a simple battery pack just with some small LED lights pulled through there. Really easy to do. But again, it's all about taking any of those dies and just taking them to wherever your imagination leads you to be. So let's go in and kind of stroll through the neighborhood, shall we? We'll take some Suburbia. This one's really, really fun because we can take this and create a whole different look with our cityscape. We've gone beyond the whole industrial kind of city skyline look and really gone into the neighborhood using just colors of cardstock. And the nice thing about these dies, again, all the detailed pieces, everything from the little trees to all the little details for the roof line, even that little clothesline there. Take a look at that. How great. And then just using your layers of cardstock, whether you want to create some foothills or clouds. Here we've gone in with that commute die and the little helicopter in there. And just look at that, taking one of the small talk stickers and making a little banner flying behind that helicopter. Really great. So I think this is really just a fun way to incorporate your dies. Here's another card here just showing the Suburbia, but also the commute. You can see those vehicles in there using the truck and again using a little stoplight. All of these are part of the die collection, and you're going to find that there are so many different fun ways to work with the cityscapes. And this is all about enjoying the journey, whether it's the cars or the trucks or the airplane, and again using some of those Suburbia pieces, even the trees. I'm telling you, creating your own city, sky's the limit. So the next thing I want to share with you are steel rule dies. Now I love steel rule dies simply because their ability to cut thicker things. Now there are 3 new steel rule dies. We've got a scroll, and the scroll is really cool because it creates these really large flourish pieces that we can use on a variety of different projects. This one, pipeline, has individual pipe shapes that we can build anything we want, whether it's going to be a frame or just use them as individual pieces, and gives a really great industrial look. And of course, speaking of industrial, you know how I love gears. This really impressed me. And to me, being a designer for Sizzix for so many years, we've really evolved in the way we can create design. Our original gear, our gadget gear, was very, very basic, had just a few teeth to each of the gears, and now take a look at what we can do out of steel rule die. All of these individual gears, even the pulley here that we've got, that is all part of this steel rule die, and there's so many pieces, and this is a Big L, so that means we can cut a lot of pieces in one pass. Let me show you what we made with these. Take a look at this. This is showing you really the key to working with your dies and using them for your own art pieces. Here, this is a mixed media project where we've gone in and created this whole pipe structure in the background. And again, because all of these are individual cut pieces, you have the ability to construct this to fit whatever scale project you're creating. And then just adding some embellishments, including some of the gears, but of course, including photographs or words or really anything. Remember, dies are just a shape. It's what you do to them that creates art. Now, another one in art is the scroll. Now, the scroll works really great because, again, they're these really large flourish pieces, very chunky, so it allows us to add a lot of different mediums, whether it's paint or collage medium or even stamped images. And you can see that this art project just uses the scrolls just as the focal element to the piece. Now, back here, wow. This is taking mixed media to its highest point, and I love working with these. I'll talk about each one individually because they are so cool when it comes to working with it. Here we've gone in, just use the scroll piece, but take a look at this area up here. This is the negative area. Remember when you're working with dies that certain shapes, the positive and the negative, really create very interesting elements to your creative work. Here adding in some of those gear pieces, we've got texture fade, and just covered it in a lot of color, whether you're using ink or paint. And the same thing applies to this one, where we've gone in and just used that negative space here. Don't even use the positive piece on this one, or using the negative shape for wildflowers, or again, using your texture paste or your embossing folders just to create your own mixed media dimension. I really like the ability to die cut or emboss just simple plain pieces of paper and add your own color with inks and paints. Now for the gears, wait till you see these guys. Very cool. Take a look at this. Look at all of these intricate gears cut out of metallic. Now, one of the cool things about this particular die is, in addition to the gear pieces, we've also created these little elements that actually create these nuts and bolts. So any of the individual pieces that come out, all of the circles, all of the hexagons, you can layer those to create hardware that layer on top of the gear, all part of the die. So remember, you're using not only the gear pieces, but the pieces that come out to create all of these hardware elements. This is all chipboard and paper. Pretty crazy. Then we've got this one. Take a look at this. Again, super dimensional, where you can see how it's all layered on there just using your foam tape, and just create a cluster just to frame your focal point on a card. There's nothing that these dies can't do. So I have a couple more steel rule dies that I want to share with you, and these two actually make something three-dimensional, which I think is very cool. This one is the lantern. Now the nice thing about this lantern is it makes a very small lantern that can be used as a party favor, or it will even hold a battery-operated tea light. And you can see here, because it is steel rule, that we have the ability to cut a variety of different materials. Again, whether these are thick cardstock or even chipboard or matte board, if you're going to cut these out, you can cut and create a lantern. And I like the whole idea of working with a die is, again, it can create its own unique theme to whatever it is that you need it to be, whether it's something very simple and plain, whether we want to just use some dark cardstock, or you really want to dress this up. This one could be for a wedding. You can see the bride and groom on there. You can see how you really can personalize your die cuts. And inside there, there's just a little bag of birdseed, which I think is a great favor. Or create something for the holidays. And again, whether you want to use the lantern all on its own or just mount it onto a wooden box or a piece of chipboard. I think that's really great. Now the next one is creating these little houses. Now These aren't like the dwellings. This is a little bit simpler, but still very cool because it is a 3D surface that we can create not only home decor pieces, but we can also use it on dimensional artwork. These are constructed very, very simple, and I'll pull these in just so you can take a look at them. What they are, there's two different sizes of these houses on this one steel rule die, and when you run this through twice, it's not only going to cut the chipboard, it's actually going to score it. It's going to cut partially through that chipboard, allowing you to easily fold and bend and construct these shapes. So you not only have the front and the back and the walls, you also have the roof. And all this requires 2 passes of your die, glue the tabs together, and it's very easy to construct. Now, another great thing to point out is, again, how we can decorate these. We can decorate these with different embossing folders if you want to create texture on the roof. You can use other die-cut shapes, whether we're using the wildflowers for this, any way that you want to theme these. And a great trick is these roof pieces. Now, this is going to cut one continuous piece that has that score on the top that you can create the rooftop, and both of these rooftops are the same length. We can also take this, cut it right in the middle, and we can use it as a base or a foundation for that same little house. You don't have to put a base on it if you don't want to, but if you do, it's great that we can still use that die shape for these. Theming them a little bit more vintage, create these same houses and just use photographs on there. Use photographs, use any of your ephemera, anything that you want to create your own kind of customized work when it's using these little houses. And I think that when it comes to designing dies, not only do I want to think of cards and papercraft and scrapbook pages, I also want to think of really great gifts or home decor pieces, and I think these houses really do that. Now take a look at this one. I'm going to kind of pull this whole series in because using your word dies, using your alphabets, we can create a whole little sentiment like home is where the heart is, and that's really fun that we can go in and utilize corrugate if we want. We can cut the corrugate rooftops, or adding any type of sewing to our cardstock before we glue this on, because again, our structure is just chipboard. You can do all of your inking, stamping, painting, sewing on the paper, and then adhere the paper to the front of these little houses. I just think it's such a great way to get the most out of your dies. So I want to share with you some more Thinlits. Now remember, thin dies cut thin things, and the benefit of having a Thinlit is the unbelievable amount of detail we can incorporate into a die cut. So here we have a variety of much more detailed. We've got the small layered butterfly, and the nice thing about this is the smaller version of the Thinlit we came out with last year of these layered butterflies that cut the solid piece of the butterfly as well as that detailed layer. And we get 2 different styles of these butterflies. Then this was a serious favorite last year, and these are wildflowers. So this is Wildflower 2. It's a whole different variation of these very detailed, intricate flowers that we can layer onto a variety of our projects. Now, of course, we can never get enough tattered florals. So we have regular tattered floral, the jumbo, we've got tiny tattered floral, we have mini tattered floral, and now we have small tattered floral. And you can see it's so many different layers of these tattered floral pieces that can be used independently, or you can stack them and layer them to create unbelievable dimension on your projects. This one even includes a little branch and some leaf pieces, which are really great. And then this one. Now, I can't wait to share the samples with this one. This is the paper cut bird, and this paper cut bird is very cool because it's got so many different details and layers. And I'm going to show you that not only can you use this entire piece, but you can also cut individual components of this to incorporate on your projects. So let's talk about the projects. I'll start out just sharing this butterfly. So the great thing about these detailed butterflies is that ability to layer them. You can see on the top we have the detailed layer here, and underneath it is the solid foundation of that butterfly. And you can use either one. You can use them as a silhouette piece, or you can stack them to create really great dimension here, like this mixed media art piece. You can also just use the detailed layer on a card. Now again, all of these projects have so many different layers and different dies and shapes being used in there, but I'm just going to call out just one, and that's going to be this detailed butterfly. Great way that you can ink it and just make it a focal point onto your project. Now in using mixed media, you can use a variety of texture paste, embossing folders, embossing powders, paints, anything to create any type of dimension to your artwork. Here, that detailed butterfly is colored with embossing powders, and using embossing powders on this really gives it a really unique texture and colorful effect on this project. Pretty cool. I love the background of this too. Now we'll go into these wildflowers. Now what I love about working with these wildflowers is just the fact that we have such very, very thin lines that actually look like pressed wildflowers, because you see all of those individual stems in there, and you can layer so many different pieces to create such a great background. Here this is just used as a focal point on a mini clipboard. Pretty clever way to use a die. Now this one, there's a cool thing about this particular card. Not only do we have these wildflowers, which is what we're talking about, I really like the simplicity of this project, but let me point something out here. If you take a look at the background, this is using the Thinlit words. Now these word dies are designed as this knockout die here, like happy birthday. But here, these are just die cut and left in the cardstock and used as a background. So remember, when it comes to working with the dies, you can still cut out a shape sometime and not even remove it from the paper and use it as a background. Very, very clever. I think that's cool. And then we've got this one. So you can cluster these wildflowers and create a bouquet. So here, taking these and just layer them together, put them with half of a doily using a little bit of mixed media. But what a really clever way to work with these individual flowers, whether you want to use them as an entire background or again, just kind of group them together to create a bouquet. Now we're going to get into something really cool, and that is the paper cut bird. Now, this paper cut bird's very, very detailed. It is a large Thinlit. It really is, because it will cut a background that's actually larger than a card. And this was designed on purpose, of course, because I wanted something that not only can we use the entire thing on a card or a project, but we can go in and we can take sections of this die and use it in different ways. So let me just talk about the shape itself. So this is one complete die cut. So when you pass this through your cardstock, you're going to get this entire shape, and you can use it as it is. But we can also go in and just snip different elements of it, so we can just use the flower. Cut down here, and we can just use the branch with these little flowers. This could be a corner accent, possibly on a card or a canvas, or we can just use the bird as a focal point. So remember, when you're working with dies, you can use the entire shape, or you can just go in and snip these paper cuts apart to create individual elements to use on your projects. Now, using this on a project, this is what's really great, and that is taking a die and really making art from that. And using this bird piece, this you can see has been layered inside that frame, so we create that 3D look. And here we've used those flowers. Just as we start stacking them and create layers, we create a whole assemblage art piece for home decor. And utilizing your dies for different things, that's, I think, the most important thing about remembering the investment in working with dies. This is a tool, this is the shape that you want to cut and use again and again, as many different ways as we possibly can. Here I'll show you this floral here. Again, taking just that small tattered floral and layering this, and this one is combined with the tiny tattered floral. We have that little quilling tool that we've rolled this up. So remember, it's really exciting to have new dies, but it's also great when we can take new dies and incorporate them with the ones that we already have. As a crafter, we always have so much to say. So what better way to do that than using alphabets and word dies in all of our projects? So I want to share a couple of the new ones. Now, these Bigs XLs, these are huge steel rule dies, and the nice thing about this is the fact that we can cut an entire alphabet and numbers out of chipboard, out of fabric, out of cardstock, and we can use them any way we want. So having different fonts, that's what's always exciting. Now, these dies, we pretty much do a limited run every time we come up with an individual alphabet. So if you see one that you like, you should definitely pick it up. This one is Broadway. This is really great because it's a very tall, skinny font that we can use on different projects, and we can create longer words because the font is tall and skinny. Now, having a little deco, I love this one. This has a very Art Deco look, and I like the whole kind of dynamic of this. This goes well with cityscapes, and I'll share a card with that, but you can use this for monograms or anything that you want to add that little cool Great Gatsby kind of deco element to a project. Then, of course, words. Now, words, when it comes to Thinlits, there's a variety of different fonts. There's been the script font, there's been the tall block font, and this, of course, is that thin, skinny font. And I released some of these last year in the seasonal launch, and adding these new words are really great because remember, this is a thin die that just cuts the words. It does not cut the box around it. So you can use these as floating words, or you can use the individual letters that punch out of these. So here we've got some that has just some sentiments, all different kind of words on there. We've got some great kind of themed. We've got some travel ones if we want any type of travel words on there. There's just a variety that you can get, and they're designed to really mix and match. So if you pick one up, you can use it just what's in the package, or you can combine them with other sets to create your own phrases and quotes. And then, of course, any of the holidays, whether we're doing Valentine's or Thanksgiving or Christmas, 4th of July, having those words for whether you're doing note cards or packaging or any type of gifts, also really cool. So let's kind of show how these are put to use. This was a card that I shared in Cityscapes, and what's nice about that, if you look at the top and you see Metro, there is that deco font in action. just using those really bold kind of die-cut letters on the front of a card, or again, you can use this in a framed art piece. I just really love the styling of that font, one of my favorites. Then of course bring these back in, these are from those little houses, but again, remember when I talked about having this Broadway, that tall, skinny font, using this to create words, and again, having a different style of font that's really going to stand out from using some of the thin words or thin letters in our projects. So again, the more alphabets you have, the better it is to work with them together. Now let's talk about the words. So here you can see, and this again was from Cityscapes, but down here we have remember this. The idea of using this Thinlit and using these letters is really the ability to kind of cut through and drop those out and knock those out. And because they're individual words, we can space these apart. We can use whatever size words we need for our projects, or we can even go in and create quotes. And again, this is one of the things that I love about utilizing dies. Combining these words, you're the one that creates your own poems, your own statements, your own sentiments. Anything that your imagination is telling you to create, you can use with all of these different word dies. And just having this new thin font, that's what's really nice, because we can actually add more words to a smaller amount of space. And that's really what I love about working with dies. There's so much to say. In the world of Sizzix, shape and texture go hand in hand. So whenever I launch new dies, new shapes, new anything, I need to have some texture fades, because the ability to add that little extra element to your projects, that's what ties everything together. So we'll talk about texture fades and their ability to emboss. And you can emboss cardstock, you can emboss fabric, you can emboss even chipboard with these. And that's what's really nice, because it gives your project dimension and texture. So here you can see this pattern, and I like to really kind of mix it up. And I think the more you can see how a simple pattern can be adapted, I think that's what really sparks our creative curiosity. Here you can see back here, just the simplicity of using this texture fade in the back behind those wildflowers. It creates a very soft look. Well, we can take something and give it more of an organic look just by changing the color of the background. We have the texture, but instead of it running vertical, this time it's running horizontal. And remember that when it comes to working with your texture fades, that you can use them any way you want. You can cut them up, you can use the entire thing, and you can have them go different directions. Here, using that just on an overall inked background, this is really nice because the texture is very subtle. You see our inked background, but when the light hits it just right, you really identify that textural background. So I think that's what's really cool about working with texture fades. Now, of course, different style, that's also really key, because we can go in and take something even as industrial as Cityscape and just soften it up just by using this doily one. I really like I think the whole contrast of adding some floral elements to that Cityscape. I think it's just a fun way to introduce it to a project. Now this one, how about framing a shaker card? Here we can take something, and this is really where I think texture fades and any type of embossing folder really lend themselves to your projects, because you can dress up something like this shaker card without using any ink, any stamps, anything, just the texture of the cardstock. And you can see that that new flourish has a beautiful overall pattern that really creates a nice accent to a card. Now, it doesn't always have to be a card. Here we've gone in just with that little building and using the new lattice or trellis, we've just kind of gone in and just added that element to the top. And you don't have to use an entire background. Remember that. This is a texture, so whether you're using it on cardstock, whether you're using it on metal, you can cut up individual elements and just use it to accent your project. I think that's great. Now this one, really, really creative. Because how about taking a texture, an overall embossing, and use it as an actual image? So here, using the new roses, just go in and watercolor that individual textured background. So we're using it as its own focal point, and then of course dress it up with a doily and just a word die. I think that's really cool to go in and watercolor your texture fades, because let's face it, we want to watercolor everything now. Now I like to share this, and I'm going to bring both of these into the shot, because I think what's unique about it is to remember that your texture and how you use it is really going to change your overall die shape. So both of these are using that detail butterfly, but this one we have a nice floral background. So you can see it creates a really soft background for this card using those butterflies. Again, just really soft by inking over that texture fade. But by changing the background and even changing the colors, we've taken that detail butterfly, and with this ringer, we've created a whole mixed media background. So again, using your dies, but by changing up your textures of those elements, really gives you creative possibilities. I think that's cool. Now let's get a little bit more industrial. I like this one. Take a look at this. This crock is very, very cool. because here we can go in, and when you're embossing, we can not only run this through a texture fade, but because that area is raised, you can go over and ink this with embossing ink and then use your embossing powder, and take a look at that. We've added that great sheen, that great shine to it, just because we've got that raised texture. So remember, you can incorporate your inks, your paints, your embossing powders whenever you use a texture fade on your projects. Now this one, this is very cool because you can take an entire numbered background and you can emboss it, but if you cut this embossed background into pieces, you can use them as individual elements or individual components on your cards. And I think, to me, that's the best use of combining textures with your die-cut shapes. So if you're a fan of the dwellings, those are the steel wool dies that create these really fun buildings, you're going to love this new release, which of course are landscape. We need a way to dress up the scenery of all of our little buildings and dwellings. And the nice thing about this, again, it's a steel wool die, so we can cut chipboard and we can create these 3D standing landscape pieces. Now you can see here, these are all the different types of landscapes you get. And of course, they're designed to coordinate with all of the different dwellings. And the scale of this is designed to be used in the foreground as well as the background. There's all sorts of things from cactus to cypress trees to just a regular green tree, even a pine tree. And they're really a great way to kind of go in with your whole neighborhood and give it a unique aesthetic. Now, this is the palm tree that actually comes with the Surf Shack, and that was the inspiration for creating all of the trees that we can use for any of the dwelling dies. One of my favorite things about designing for Sizzix is seeing all of the products being used in a single project. And this is what I love about this one, because we've incorporated die cuts and textures and utilizing these shapes and designs into one unique creation. That is inspiring. And this is one of my favorite projects from the show, and I want to take you through. This is creating a planner book. So again, using the words, the alphabets, going in and creating a planner. Here you can see just by taking tags, using your texture fades, using the positive and negative. I just love all of the details used in this booklet. And of course, this incorporates just a printed calendar, so you can kind of print your own thing just to create your own book. And I think that's what makes kind of utilizing any of the words and shapes. And whether you're using ink, whether you're combining it with stickers or stamps or any of your favorite pattern papers, this to me is what brings die cuts to life. And that is seeing them used in kind of a finished project. Now, of course, we can always incorporate these in cards and scrapbook pages and mixed media, but I know that planners are so popular and there's a lot of people thinking, well, gosh, how would I ever incorporate a die into a planner? This is a worn binder from Ideology where it just has a ring binder, and that allows you to open and close and add these creative elements. And I think just designing your own unique theme, look at that. I just think it's such a cool way to get the most out of your die cuts and working with them. Look at that. I'll take you through here. Love using the words with the inks. And again, pattern paper. And that is creating your own book. And so whether you're kind of creating your own planner or travel book or card or anything like that, just remember that when it comes to designing, utilize your dies, utilize your texture fades, utilize your punches, utilize everything with your inks and paints and everything that you love. And so I hope that this 2017 release from Sizzix is going to inspire you to achieve your creative goals.